You keep delaying the work that might prove you're good at it, not the easy work, the work that would put your actual ability in view. That isn't always a discipline problem. It can be fear of what happens if you stop being someone with potential and become someone expected to use it. Abraham Maslow called this the Jonah Complex. The urge to shrink from your own capacity will map the loop, why it protects you, and the protocol that gives you a way out. The Jonah Complex isn't fear of doing well in the simple sense. It's avoiding the kind of growth that changes your role, raises the stakes, and puts your work where other people can judge it. You may want the result in theory. More scope. More skill. More freedom. But the path there asks for things you may not want to carry. Attention, responsibility, choices that affect other people, and fewer places to hide. Failure has a clean story. You tried, the conditions weren't right. The market didn't respond. The timing missed. None of that feels good, but failure can keep the verdict blurry. Success does the opposite. It makes the next question harder. If the work succeeds, can you do it again? If people trust you, can you meet that trust? If an opportunity opens, will you take it? Even if it changes the shape of your life, that is a different threat. Failure risks shame. Success risks obligation. Maslow named the pattern after Jonah, the figure who receives a call to a task and runs from it. The point isn't that Jonah lacked information. He knew what the task was. He understood its scale, and he fled because accepting it would demand a different life from him. Your version rarely looks that dramatic. It looks like a project that starts well, then slows down at the exact point where it could become real. You pick a clear goal. You learn enough to begin. The early work feels good because it stays private and full of promise. Then the next move involves exposure. Send the pitch. Publish the piece, apply for the role, name a price, ask for the meeting. Friction shows up right there. You don't call it fear of being great, because that sounds a bit theatrical. You call it a need for more research. You revise the plan. You clean up the workspace. You find a smaller task that feels useful and cannot reject you. The behavior looks responsible from the outside. That's why it can run for years. The system breaks when progress starts changing your identity. Before that point, you're the person who could do the thing. People often like that role. It carries praise without demanding proof. Once you do the thing, the role changes. Now you're the writer with readers, the manager with a team, the founder with customers, the expert whose opinion affects a decision. More room opens up, but the room comes with weight. There's also a social load. Your growth can create distance from people who knew you in a smaller role. Family scripts may tell you not to be too visible. Peer groups may reward being smart, funny, promising, or modest, while treating direct ambition as awkward. So you learn to keep yourself legible to the group. You stay close enough to the edge that people can see your talent, but not so close that your output forces anyone, including you, to update the story. This is why the phrase full potential can become a trap. Potential has no deadline and no audit. It can stay perfect because it hasn't met the conditions of real work. A finished project doesn't have that protection. It can fall short. It can get ignored. It can work well enough that people ask you to do more. All three outcomes remove the fantasy that you were waiting for. That is the hidden bargain. By keeping your ability unrealized, you avoid a real verdict on it. But you also keep paying for that protection. Each delay leaves an open loop in your head, and each near start becomes evidence that the task carries danger. Soon you aren't avoiding one project. You're protecting an identity built around not finding out. Fear doesn't need a pep talk. It needs a different structure. Treat it like a circuit carrying more load than it was built for. The answer isn't to insult the circuit for overheating. You change the path, reduce the load at each point, and install a rule that keeps the current moving. Start by separating ambition from scope. Ambition is the direction you want your life to move. Scope is the piece of work you can finish this week. When you confuse them, every email, draft, or pitch starts to feel like proof of who you are. Pick one concrete output instead. A proposal sent to one person. An application completed by Friday. A short article published at a set length. The point isn't to act small forever. It's to give the work a boundary your nervous system can hold. Next, set a minimum viable exposure threshold. Decide in advance what leaves the building and at what size. You might publish one useful idea each week, send one pitch after 2 drafts, or submit the application once every required field is complete. Keep the threshold low enough that you can repeat it. A huge launch plan often gives avoidance a very comfortable office chair. Small public actions remove that chair. Preparation needs a finish line too. Before you begin, define what counts as enough research, enough revision, and enough practice. If you need 3 sources, stop at 3 sources. If the document gets 2 edit passes, it gets 2 edit passes. Those are decision gates. They prevent the anxious version of you from changing the rules halfway through, which is what tends to happen when the work gets close to exposure. You don't need to feel certain. You need the condition for moving forward to be clear. Then reduce the identity load. Your job today isn't to prove you're exceptional, talented, or ready for a larger life. That is too much weight for a single afternoon, and it turns a normal task into a trial. Take the role of the person who completes today's deliverable. You are not becoming a writer when you send an article. You are sending an article. You aren't proving you deserve the role when you apply. You're completing an application that meets the stated requirements. That sounds almost too plain. Good. Plain work creates output, while identity fear creates very polished avoidance. You also need friction at the exit. A new idea should not get the same access to your calendar as the work already in progress. Capture it in one place. Then wait before you switch projects or change direction. Set a pivot rule. For example, no major change until the current output ships, unless you write down the reason, the cost of leaving, and the exact condition that would justify the switch. Most escape plans look less convincing once they have to survive a paragraph. After each exposure, run a short review. Write what you did, what you feared would happen, and what the evidence showed. Keep it factual. No self-rating. No attempt to turn a bad response into a personality report. Maybe you expected silence and received a reply. Maybe you expected criticism and got useful notes. Maybe the result fell flat, but you learned the task did not destroy you. Your brain needs records because fear tends to keep its own accounting system, and it is not known for careful auditing. Keep the goal narrow for a while. You are building capacity through repeated contact with being seen, carrying a bit more responsibility, and sending work out before it feels complete. Each repetition teaches your system that public action is a task you can contain, not a verdict you have to survive. Greatness stops carrying so much threat when it stops being the assignment. The assignment is the next bounded output with a clear edge and rule for when it leaves your desk. Your potential isn't the problem. The missing piece is a system that can move your work from private intent to public action without asking you to settle your whole identity first. If this reframed loop, subscribe. The next video covers how to restart after avoidance. Before the day ends, choose one small output and send it somewhere beyond your desk.